Hey guys, you're joining us for the Insights Lab podcast again tonight, and I'm here with Brendan. Today's topic, or tonight's topic, is actually about US and China and their race to dominance. So, how does technology actually play a role in influencing the rest of the world? How does AI play a part? And how do semiconductors play a part? So, with semiconductors, the largest role it plays in this technological war is its involvement in pretty much anything software. The GPUs are used for all the big tech companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and so on. And if we think about how big of a role they play to us as consumers, like we literally live on these devices, we use their software, it is part of our everyday life. And then we've obviously heard about the security concerns on TikTok and how the social media can be used to influence like the rest of the world. It's easy to understand how semiconductors playing a role in AI and the influence of AI can then have a flow-on effect and provide a country with so much more influence. So I think the other thing that we need to consider is some of the policy, some of the regulation in an effort to influence, China's. Let me rephrase that. So it's the impact that US is trying to limit China from having on the rest of the world and vice versa. Do you want to touch on some of these policies?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So obviously, there's been a change in frequency of these tensions between the US and China. This all started in 2014. I'll give you a little bit of a timeline on how this has played out. China's announced that by 2030, they want to be the leading superpower of AI. They realize the economic output is phenomenal. I think it was quoted at $15.7 trillion.
That's massive.
Yeah, I know. And we saw the government really kind of backing this play by introducing something called the Big Fund back in 2014, which is to be introduced in two different phases, both 5-year intervals, 2014 to 2019 and 2019 to 2024. And that pledge was 200 billion yuan. And that was for companies to manufacture, their fabrication facilities for semiconductors within China in the aim to lower dependency on their imports from the US. Now, this is followed by the US introducing their first export bans to China regarding semiconductors and microchips from their leading technology companies. Now, they obviously have seen this as a huge threat. And this has played out to this day. And this has now come back into contention for multiple reasons. One, the big elephant in the room is the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, tell us about that.
It's a $349 billion pledge, to domesticate manufacturing facilities and fabrication facilities for semiconductors within the US.
So in other words, the country is investing in its own technologies locally and giving incentives for local companies to do it locally instead of doing it abroad when it might actually cost them more, but it's going to give them more influence, right?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And the thing that I found really, really off color with this particular initiative, the chips and so part of the Inflation Reduction Act, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
But they also introduced something last year in August called the Chips and Science Act. And that was a $280 billion pledge for the same reason. They want to kind of domesticate their supply chain. But they had a caveat as part of that policy. And that was that any company involved with this grant cannot increase their output by 5% for advanced chips to any Chinese business. And they can't do it by 10% for older technologies. And it really kind of shows that they are seeing China as a threat. I mean, this isn't new. China's, been in contention as a superpower for the last, it seems to be like 2 decades now. But, this is really, really a hot topic at the moment. China just recently banned exports of gallium and germanium.
Yeah.
Now, the market size for that's not really that great, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but that it is an aggressive action towards the US. And, things are really heating up. I know that me and you were talking about the importance of Taiwan.
Taiwan Semiconductor.
Yeah. What are your thoughts behind that? I mean, I know that there's a lot of political debacle and there's a rich history between China and Taiwan. They want to kind of reclaim it as part of their territory.
Yeah.
But what role does Taiwan play in the tech war between these two nations?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting question to tackle. And I think if we take like a 40,000 foot view of this, originally there was tensions between China and Taiwan already, even though they're sort of on the same landmass, they consider themselves separate. And with the rising tensions between the US and Taiwan and, being sort of a communist country and then also US trying to influence Taiwan in general, you've got Taiwan in the middle of China. It's it is the largest manufacturer of semiconductors. So even though like we hear Nvidia being the main power horse behind these GPUs which will power AI, where are these chips coming from? They're actually buying these chips from Taiwan Semi. So I think it's just really interesting to see some of these policies impact like some of these large countries. And sometimes an enemy's enemy is your friend. So like you're seeing, potentially the US working with Japan in order to have to make China's influence like less by having some of these incentives which help support previous enemies to sort of align themselves and ensure that they remain the dominant player in these emerging technologies.
That's really interesting. I mean, I heard a lot about Taiwan and some of the fighting that's happening over there and some of the tensions. I had no idea that they were the biggest exporter and the biggest producer of semiconductors. There's a little bit more than meets the eye behind this, isn't it? And it puts, the leading semiconductor manufacturer, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, in a pretty unique position.
Yeah.
One thing that I saw is that they're trying to lower political and sovereign risk by, building and investing in fabrication facilities in Europe. So there's going to be one in Germany, and I know there's a $40 billion fabrication facility being built in Arizona. It's going to be very interesting to see China's response to this.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think like just double tapping on that. So, this whole topic is around US reducing their reliance on China, even though it's like cheaper to, buy semiconductors and buy chips from China. They're making a conscious effort to become less reliant on them, provide less exports to China, and China's response is, okay, if you're going to cut us off, we're going to invest locally. And it's leading to the reverse of globalization. It's leading to, hey, okay, two can play at that game. We're going to invest more locally. We're going to find ways to leverage AI. We're going to make it our primary focus now. And we understand the importance of tech. And, we're sort of looking at our own country and seeing how we can improve strengthen our tech, whereas previously it was more around manufacturing.
You just said something to me that is really, really just opened my eyes. The reverse of globalization. We've seen in the investment realm a lot of these companies adopting onshoring policies regarding to their raw materials. This is insane. My view on this, or what I would like to kind of put to you and get your thoughts on it, is the digital realm itself. We can reverse globalization in terms of trade,
Yeah.
right, and raw materials, but when we go into the digital realm that's dominated by the largest technology companies in the world, that seems to be irreversible. And the introduction of AI itself, the cat's really out of the bag. It's what are your thoughts? We know that
There's no going back.
yeah, there's no going back. Going, in history, we've seen the geopolitical realm with trade, policy, and military capabilities.
Yeah.
We've got the economic realm, global trade, the World Economic Forum and whatnot. And then you've got the digital realm. The key difference is that the digital realm is dominated by technology and the governments are actually on the back seat of this vehicle. How do you think this is playing out? Who do you think is winning the war at the moment in regards to tech?
That's a great question. It's almost like watching a tennis match, and you're getting rally after rally after rally, and you're like, who's actually leading this race? And I'd say it's really hard to tell from the outside who actually has the edge. If you think historically where the largest tech companies are, based, it's the US, right? But I think there is that creeping doubt in most people's mind whether US is going to be able to establish and maintain that lead. And I guess, like, to answer your question, I know I'm going a little off topic, but if we think about globalization, generally globalization and development of technology is great because although, yes, when there's disruption, a lot of people lose their jobs and things have to change and people have to adapt, but it also creates a ton more jobs out of it where, output is greater. And globalization, if you think about manufacturing and why China became such a power play, was they basically made it possible for us to buy, you know, VCRs and DVDs and all these sort of things for a fraction of the price. Our parents would have paid like $1,000 for a DVD player. Now you buy one from JB Hi-Fi for like $60 and you don't think twice about it. That's only made possible because China was able to build these massive factories. Places like the US and Australia decided, hey, it doesn't make sense for us to manufacture this locally. So we're just going to get China to do a lot of this hard manual labor in their factories, import them, and still be profitable. And we're seeing the same thing in tech, but then we're realizing now it's a lot more is at stake. So we're putting influence and power and like building these technologies locally over economics. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's the interesting thing.
Yeah, absolutely. With an economic incentive as big as 15.7 trillion, I think it was quoted.
Yeah.
The race for AGI is definitely on. For people that don't know, AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, and we're not there yet, but that's essentially what these AI companies are striving for, and that's the closest to a sentient entity that we can kind of get to, that an AI is able to reason. It's really kind of caught up, so all the data is up to date, and it's going to be able to understand context and whatnot. The view amongst some of the big tech players is that there's going to be multiple AGIs in the world. However, they are going to be sector specific and first in, best dressed. China and the US are definitely on their way. We've seen other companies, the European Union, especially Germany is pretty big on it. But this is really playing out. I think you touched on this just a moment ago, but the overall effect on consumers. I mean, these policies being adopted, of onshoring some of their raw materials, some of these countries are going to have to fill a void in that supply chain. You've seen the biggest exporter of nickel, block their or have an export ban. You've seen the same with cobalt, and now with the gallium and germanium's the next on the chopping block.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Have you heard the term "Made in China 2025"?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, from what I've noticed, it's always been fucking made in China. So,
but this is different, right? So,
okay,
this like Chinese industrial strategy aims to achieve technological autonomy and self-sufficiency in semiconductors.
Okay,
so that is China's explicit effort to say, hey, our country is going to move our reliance from the Western world, and we're going to no longer rely heavily on imports, but we're going to do things locally. And this is going to be a point of contention for the next 5-10 years. Like, we think like, oh, this game is going to be done over the next 2 years. No way. This is going to be back and forth. And, someone's going to emerge and we're going to look back and be like, wow, okay, China's has got a huge lead over US now, or vice versa. But, for the next 5 years, I think it's just going to be back and forth. And we're going to see, unfortunately, the cost to these technologies go up just because, it's each country is trying to keep the technology within their own country. And while GDP is going up because of all the extra cool things we can do through generative AI and like all the other products, we're also going to see these countries operate independently rather than together. So that ultimately impacts the end user.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely crazy. It feels like it's a battery that's pretty warm at the moment. They could go supercritical any time now and I think the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company will play a role in what shapes. They're already in a position and they've already been kind of pressured to ease some of the tensions that we're seeing. It's going to be really interesting because I don't think the Chinese are really going to allow, even though it's understandable that they're, increasing their foreign footprint due to political risk. I don't know how that's going to go down with China and whether they'll allow that or who will fill the void for the Chinese supply chain moving forward.
Yeah.
As you said, this is going to be in contention for quite a while, and we look forward to, providing you some updates moving forward. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the podcast and got a lot out of it. We look forward to bringing you more content in the future, AI related and other.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap, but a little preview into our next potential podcast topic. We're really excited to announce it's still going to be, perfect segue. It's going to be in AI. We're going to talk about things like AI privacy. We're going to talk about ChatGPT, which has obviously been in the limelight. We're going to talk about generative AI, the different policies, governance, data protection, security, all sorts of interesting things. We're going to go really, really deep. And we've actually intentionally decided to hold off on doing that podcast because there's just so much information that we're digesting at the moment, and we want to do that podcast. It's its own dedicated thing, but also do it justice. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next one. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.